This week's episode was brought to you by the Abbot of Thelema Resort Hotel in Italy, Madame Blavatsky's Disembodied Ghost, and the generous support of listeners like you. If you'd like to become one of our illustrious and honored supporters, please consider visiting www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will get you immediate access to all our extended episodes, which doubles how much The Whole Rabbit you get every week. You'll get access to our Discord server, where you can discuss strange topics with other listeners and creators of the show, but not only that, I'll send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our cover art at no additional cost. For the curious seeker, we have a $10 option that includes a holographic bonus sticker and the show notes. This episode clocks in at 25 pages, so the notes each week are like their own publication, and I'm happy people are starting to enjoy them. Has anybody ever flashed the peace sign at you? It's the classic 2 fingers up, palm facing outward that Nixon is famous for giving on his way out of office. It was introduced to the public during World War II by Winston Churchill and was probably known as the V for victory by most people. In reality, the seemingly innocuous hand gesture was an occult instrument of psychological warfare against the Nazi Party, implemented by Churchill at the advice of infamous British occultist Aleister Crowley, whom the newspapers at the time had dubbed the wickedest man in the world. Rather than V for victory, as the public was told, Nazi leadership would immediately recognize this gesture as V for Apophis Typhon, the rock-paper-scissors anti-force to the swastika, and a secret message that we both knew what their occult ideas were, and, as usual, were 2 steps ahead of them. Ahead of what, though, you might ask? In this episode, you will find out. In the extended show, we talk about the Nazi UFO threat, the secrets under Antarctica, and the biblical flood, and what it all has to do with Astarte. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
You know, I've been on the show for 1 year today.
Oh, congratulations!
Yay!
I've been digging rabbit holes for 1 year now.
You started on Hitler's birthday?
Yep, on Silent Hill too. I'm all grown up now, Pa.
Well, now we're going back into the underworld to talk about something just as dark as Silent Hill.
Oh yeah, this hole goes deep, like the one under the Historical Society.
Yeah, it just keeps going and going and going. Sometimes you hear German people, but it keeps going and going. I think this is the actual rabbit hole people are talking about. Like, we found it. Like, when they talk about going down the rabbit hole, this is it. This is the one.
It's the Earth's rabbit hole.
This is the big one. This is where the big chungus goes down.
The big chungus hole. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just get high on the ethylene fumes rushing out of a dubious seismic crack in the strange cave at Delphi, where we stop to eat hummus and read poetry from the Mahabharata. Nay, we erupt in cacophonous lecture to the invisible audience of confused spectral temple virgins about that one time Admiral Byrd was assaulted at the South Pole by a fleet of Hyperborean Nazi UFOs that were bitter they didn't find any Soma because the lizard people hid it all over the most obscure places of Agapanthea, and the Germans are easily distracted on scavenger hunts, because this week we're discussing the sons and serpents of Hollow Earth, as we traverse everything from ancient chthonic mythology right on down to the stupidly evil, historically confused mythology of the Nazi Party and what it has to do with New Age cosmology today. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by co-hosts Madame Mari Campari Sama Ethelberg Esquire IV.
Charmed, I'm sure, darling.
Der Maktaparat Malakot Fumpf.
Hola!
And the simp for Egyptian serpents, Heka Astra.
Hello. What does simp mean again?
Oh, honey.
Should I be offended?
It means you like Egyptian mythology.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
If Egyptian mythology had an OnlyFans, you'd be like the highest subscriber.
You know it's true. So it's fun to laugh and joke about how conspiracy theorists believe the earth is hollow and full of lizards, but once you start digging, it's like opening a can of Pringles. You find yourself making duck faces and getting crumbs everywhere. Part of getting crumbs everywhere is talking about Nazi mysticism and mythology. The reason we're doing this is because while we cannot reverse the harm the Nazi Party has done to human life, we can begin to repair and reclaim our collective cultural mythologies from the Nazis who damaged and stole them from us in the first place.
Cultural appropriation.
They're like the first New Agers, dude. They would just steal anything if they thought they could fold it into something that made them feel special.
I'd more accurately call them the poo-agers, because they are shit.
Poo age psychology.
Yeah, fuck them.
So, naturally, the best place to get started looking for reptiles in the Hollow Earth would be ancient Egypt. For starters, the ancient Egyptians believed the gods had to deal with the subterranean reptile problem at least once a night. Heka, would you tell us a little bit about the solar bark and Ra's journey through the underworld?
The Egyptian sun god Ra traveled across the sky during the 12 hours of the day in a ship known as a bark, and barks were commonly used in depictions of a deceased person's journey through the underworld as well, because a soul makes the same journey when they disappear beyond the horizon of the physical into the realm of the afterlife. So Ra's solar bark was called the Menjet bark, and he would travel on his bark during the day across the sky. And at the end of the 12 hours of day, Ra would then start his journey descending into the underworld, known as the Duat. Here he would travel in a different bark called the Methektet bark for his nightly journeys through the 12 hours of the night. And the entrance to the underworld was associated with the west, since this is the horizon where the sun would set. And once Ra descended into the Duat, he'd be assaulted by a terrible creature named Apep.
The West is the best.
So in ancient Egyptian mythology, serpent god of chaos was born in the primeval waters. This is Apep. He's also known by the name Apophis. He's a monstrous serpent that was also sometimes described or depicted as kind of lizard, crocodile, or dragon, although most often he was a serpent. And his creation was long before many of the more well-known deities like Osiris or Horus, which is to say that he was one of the first born from the creator.
Kind of a big deal.
Some of the creation stories say that he was born of Neith, the creator goddess. She's the feminine counterpart of the creator Ptah. And other creation stories say that Apep was the umbilical cord of Ra, born alongside or rather as a consequence of the sun god's birth. And even another story describes Apep as swimming in Nun, which is the waters of chaos prior to the creation of the physical world. And regardless of which narrative you follow, they don't seem to really cancel each other out, because essentially Apep is the primordial power of chaos manifest, and as such he was given the title Lord of Chaos. So then when the creator god made the physical universe, Apep was pretty pissed about that, and he was banished from Nun and sent to the Duat, or the underworld. He's not able to live and thrive in the physical world. And this is why Apep became the inevitable enemy of Ra and lies waiting for him at the entrance to the Duat in the western horizon. And then Apep follows Ra every night when he makes his journey in his solar bark, constantly attacking until his reemergence in the east, unless he can be slain.
I think it's important to point out that this chaos isn't like just a bunch of destruction and stuff. It represents a singular, there's no duality here. It's the before duality where everything is contained inside of. So I think Apep was very pissed off when they created duality in the world and separated things from the primal state, which he liked so much.
You know, I'm still pissed off about it.
Yeah.
Nun is like the chaotic waters of Nun. That's the waters of chaos, right? So this is like the inherent chaos in the waters of the ether.
In quantum physics, they would call that quantum foam. At the Planck level, everything is random, popping in and out of reality, and there's no form or function to it until you see the macro result.
It's lurking below.
Exactly.
And it doesn't really exist in the physical world per se. It exists below it.
Until it unfolds into a form of some kind.
Now, this is the same Apep that became the Greek Typhon.
I think Typhon is also related to Set in some ways.
Set is the one who slays Apep on the sun boat, correct?
Yeah, but they both have to do with chaos, right? So he's kind of like the chaos or the adversarial qualities that becomes for the purpose of good.
The taming of the chaos, allowing it to be, but shaping it.
Yeah, like Set starts off basically being like the adversary, right? Like he kills Osiris, he wants to kill Horus, he has this ongoing battle with Horus, and then eventually he ends up being a protector of Horus and slaying Apep.
It makes sense when you bring up duality because the Waset is, of course, symbolic of Set's power, but the double prongs at the end are supposed to symbolize that the singularity manifests as a dual nature. The one manifests as two.
Mm-hmm. And like you can't have Ra without the consequence of Set. So you can't have like light without the consequence of chaos.
No.
That's a dual nature, dual manifest.
I am your father. Yeah, Osiris and Set being two sides of the same thing as well. Brother natures within oneself.
As far as I understand, Egyptians had serpents and lizards in like high places in their pantheon.
And the pharaoh also wore a serpent upon their crown, which coiled around their head and came out, it arched out of the third eye in an aggressive stance.
The Urea. There's a lot of reptilian or serpents that are really high up in the pantheon, like Malcor mentioned, even Atum and Ptah. With Atum and also Ptah, they are Egyptian creator gods. You could consider them to be separate aspects of the same deity, or even the same deity with different names, in kind of the same way that Ra is also an aspect of Atum. So Atum is the self-realized creator god that sprung forth from the waters of Nun. And while Atum is most often depicted as a man, he was also sometimes depicted or described as being a serpent or a lizard. So if you think about the waters of Nun, those are the primordial waters of creation. You could say that Nun is the feminine zero, the circle, or the cosmic egg. And when you have the circle, it can't help but have a diameter, a line, or a masculine one. And this line of diameter in the circle is the serpent in the cosmic egg. So in Egypt, this was represented as Atum, who in his self-realization emerged from the watery chaos or the cosmic egg as a serpent. And this is why Atum is sometimes described as being a serpent.
Here in the notes, he's depicted as a cobra.
Yeah.
There's little actual statues of Atum as a snack boy.
Snack.
You know what's also interesting is a lot of reptiles can also reproduce if there's no males present, but then the eggs may contain a male depending on the temperature of the environment. There's a lot of weird biology behind this parallel. Is that it makes sense for a hermaphroditic lizard to be the masculine to the chaos of Nun.
Well, it's self-created like
water.
the sun. Sorry to interrupt.
Exactly. No, I agree. That's perfect. And the sun is the perfect masculine expression of the dark ocean, in other words.
Well, the sun is an aspect of Atum, like Ra is like a natural aspect of Atum. So the sun is just like an inherent realization.
And notice also reptiles need the sun to survive because they cannot warm their blood on their own.
We also mentioned Sobek before in the Animals and Familiars episode. He's that crocodile god of pharaonic power and masculine fertility. He's fierce, but he's also protective. Kind of like Set, he's like a chaotic, fierce god, but he's also a protective god. And some of the stories of his birth attribute the god Set as being his father.
Oh, wow.
While other stories still say that he was considered to be born solely from Neith, the feminine creator goddess, on behalf of Ptah, her counterpart. Sobek was also sometimes considered a part of the creation myth, swimming in the waters of Nun, just like Apep. His unpredictability often associated him with chaos as well, so he was most often associated with fertility and the waters of the Nile, and dubbed Lord of the Waters.
Ah.
This has to be who Colonel Killgore is based on in Apocalypse Now. It just has to be. He's wearing the gator shirt. Yeah, and he's also kind of Apollo, and he's like the god of the river. Like, they did that on purpose. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, the whole movie's on a river. The whole movie of Apocalypse Now takes place on a river. So yeah, the Nile. If you know, The Heart of Darkness is the book that it's based off of, and that book took place in Africa. So
yeah. Exactly.
So unlike Apep, Sobek was given associations of being a helpful form of chaos and power, and he was often associated with Ra. And it was Sobek who assisted Isis in the birth and protection of Horus the child. So he was a protector of the sun god Ra, and he was often called upon in the journey through the Duat. Sometimes even the two deities would be combined as Sobek Ra. This is the fierce, protective, and chaotic energy of the sun.
If I say it's safe to surf this beach, it's safe to surf this beach!
I've also heard that, I think it was Osiris, he got his hands chopped off and they threw it into the Nile. Sobek was tasked with retrieving them, and they credit him as building the first fishing net, and which he used to capture the hands, restore them to Osiris.
A fisher of hands.
I'm pretty sure Sobek or a crocodile form of maybe Isis, depending on the story, definitely retrieved parts of Osiris. Not the phallus, though.
So we can see that all the way back to ancient Egypt, we've had this myth of solar gods who descend into the underworld to defeat a great mother serpent or a great serpent warrior. And of course, because the Egyptians passed on their mythology to the Greeks and so on and so forth, the centuries turned to millennia. The wisdom mythology of bygone eras slowly morphed into legend. In an era where radio, electricity, and the combustion engine were rapidly pushing industrial and household technology into a dimension formerly reserved for magic, combined with the world's empires running out of land to colonize, the possibility of a hollow earth would invariably become something worth earnestly investigating.
But not only that, it would become a centerpiece of sci-fi mythology with the publication of The Journey to the Center of the Earth, a classic science fiction novel by Jules Verne. And it describes explorers journeying through the Earth's crust, through caves and whatnot, and then they come out into this, there's like a beach and a continent underground and a light source. This was a markation of this theory moving from the occult discussion into the mainstream discussion. But there's still a lot of stuff behind it that popularized it. Really, it stems from all of the mythology around the world because every world mythology has something to do with this.
Now, directly preceding Journey to the Center of the Earth, which was immensely popular, was The Coming Race, originally by an anonymous author, of which Helena Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner of Theosophy believed to be in part true, at least in an occult sense. Now, many historians will cite that this was the starting point for many bizarre beliefs of the Third Reich and the Nazi Party, and we'll be getting to that very shortly. In The Coming Race, it was sometimes even published as Vril, the Power of the Coming Race, and it was about basically a bunch of giants that lived in the inner earth that appeared like angels, and they could manipulate energy and thoughts with this all-pervasive fluid that ran throughout their dimension, which was called Vril. And this Vril is what allowed them to have their godlike powers. Likewise, the Theosophists thought Vril was a thing, and we know that Hitler came out of the Thule Society and the Vril Society, which championed these ideas as being real in some way.
The name of the guy who wrote Journey to the Center of the Earth, I'm just, Verne, I'm just like Ernest Verne goes to Agartha.
Ernest travels to the center of the earth.
Just a bunch of German reptiles in there.
Yeah, he's freaking out.
Honestly, so much was changing during the 20th century. I think a hollow Earth with habitable continents was way less of a stretch than some of our highfalutin ideas about simulation theory, like today. Like, that's no less fantastic, in my opinion. In his wildly successful Beasts, Men, and Gods, famous explorer Ferdinand Ossendowski recounts hearing a tale of an esoteric sect of Tibetan Buddhists that within the earth there existed a subterranean kingdom known as Agartha. Likewise, along with a menagerie of other half-understood ideas imported from the East, the Theosophical Society founded by Madame Blavatsky championed this idea as well, claiming that underneath Tibet there existed a race of demigods known as the Asuras. In the 20s, Nicholas Roerich and his wife Helena were more than likely dispatched by the early Soviet Union on a harrowing expedition through Tibet to find its very entrance. It was speculated at the time that whoever inhabited Agartha was not only spiritually superior, but technologically superior to the surface dwellers, and enlisting their alliance could prove to be an edge in global politics. So they went actually looking for a hole to the center of the earth based on some of these popular ideas we see in the Jules Verne novel and in Theosophy.
A lot of them are dormant volcanoes too, or extremely notoriously deep caves. Just natural formations that would allow you to get deep enough without digging the whole way.
So if we take a look at the mythology of Tibet, composed of various Buddhist and Hindu sects, the Asuras are a class of powerful supermen, demigods, with both good and bad qualities. Early Vedic literature makes little distinction, but as time went on, good Asuras are known as Adittas, and evil ones are known as Danavas. The Adittas were understood to be the children of the sun god Surya and led by the mighty king of gods, Varuna, one of many Indo-European thunder gods to which the swastika was sacred. Others included the Greek Zeus, the Roman Jupiter, and the German Thor. Naturally, this deeply embedded Indo-European mythology proved to be too juicy for the Nazi proclivity for roleplay to resist.
Also, if you notice, a swastika is literally two sig runes that are overimposed on each other, which is a lightning bolt.
In Buddhist context, the word asura is sometimes translated as demigod, anti-god, or even titan, similar to the Greek myth. These titans are constantly waging wars against the devas, or good gods. The ruler of the evil asuras, or danavas, was a reptilian demon god named Vritra, who is often referred to in the Vedas as Ahi, which means snake. Scholars are quick to note his functional similarity to
Jormungandr. It's Jormungandr
of Norse myth, Veles of Slavic myth, and of course Typhon of Greek myth, as he is said to reside in and block the entrance to the underworld. Jormungandr. Just pretend I said it right. Let me try it.
You said it wrong again.
According to the Vedas, Indra first gets high on a heroic dose of soma before slaying Vritra and assumes the title of He Who Slayed the First of Dragons. In some myths, Indra has a trick In some myths, Indra has to trick Agni, the god of fire, Soma, the divine elixir, and Varuna, the god of upholding justice, into helping him kill the dragon Vritra, who until then, those three had referred to as their father. After slaying Vritra, Indra again uses his thunderbolt to slay Vritra's mom, Danu, who is understood to be the mother of all the evil Asuras.
Like Lilith, right? Believe we discussed Danu in that episode.
Yeah, Lilith is a little bit like this snake figure because Lilith is said to wait in the underworld, at least in the left-hand path tradition. So there might be some similarity here.
But I'm seeing a lot of similarities with thunder and lightning here, like symbols.
So this gives us a solid foundation for understanding why the Nazis used the swastika as their symbol. At first glance, it does seem a bit confusing for Germanic ultra-nationalist fascists to adopt something like an Eastern symbol. But things become much clearer, however, when we consider the history of India and its Vedic religious origins. As we learned in our What the Fuck is Hinduism episode, the mysterious Indus Valley civilization, a peaceful culture with indoor plumbing and no weaponry, eventually commingled with the nomadic, horse and ox cart using invaders we know today as the Aryans. With the Aryans came both the wheel and Sanskrit. Remember the Buddhist term for suffering? It has Aryan origins. So central was the wheel to Aryan nomadic life that the term for suffering is derived from the terminology for a poorly set axle hole. It was the intermingling of native and Aryan populations that produced Indian culture that we know today, and how the wheel or chakra came to be the defining symbol of its wisdom traditions. So while the chakra or wheel can be said to symbolize many things, including karma, time, and dynamic energy, it is understood that the mastery of which is the ultimate weapon. In regard to the wheel or chakra used as a weapon, we can look at two well-known and famous examples. Remember the Buddha's dad and the news he received from the oracle shortly after the Buddha's birth? Siddhartha Gautama was destined at birth to become one of two men, either a world conqueror or a world redeemer. As the story goes, Buddhism only exists at all because Gautama's father failed at manipulating his son into becoming the prophesied world ruler known as the Chakravartin. Now, Sanskrit, Pali, Chinese, and Japanese all have words for this prophesied world monarch, but each one means wheel turning king. In Hindu tradition, the Chakravartin is often described as being a prophesied final incarnation of Vishnu named Kalki, who is the Hindu equivalent of Christ coming back with a sword, bringing a final judgment to all sinners, non-believers, and evildoers. Unlike Christ, however, Vishnu's weapon of choice is the chakra, which is almost always represented as spinning in his uppermost right hand and symbolizes Vishnu's willingness to fight on behalf of moral rightness. This wheel, specifically the one Vishnu had, was called the Sudarshana Chakra, or the Disc of Auspicious Vision, a spinning discus weapon with 108 serrated edges, used by the Hindu god Vishnu and his manifestations like Krishna. As mentioned before, the Sudarshana Chakra is portrayed on the rear right hand of his four hands, but also alongside a Shankha, or a conch shell, a Gada, mace, and a Padma, or lotus. In the Rig Veda, the chakra used by Vishnu was symbolic of the Wheel of Time. But by the late period, the Sudarshana chakra emerged as an Ayudha Purusha, or an anthropomorphic form of wrathful Vishnu used to destroy demons. This deity is known as Chakra Perumal, or Chakra Thaswar. The word Chakra Thaswar actually means Ring of God, the one ring to rule them all.
Da-na-na.
The Elden Ring. Now it's a stretch. I don't really know. I haven't played yet.
Yeah, I did want to talk about some Elden Ring stuff, but I can't spoil it because a lot of this is actually kind of relevant to the game.
Oh no! If I could just kill one boss in Bloodborne, we'll be set. I'll get to Elden Ring.
We'll get there.
Now the word Sudarshana is derived from two Sanskrit words, Su, meaning good or auspicious, and Darshana, meaning vision. This concept reminded me of something I'm familiar with in tarot. Tarot, spelled T-A-R-O, can be rearranged to spell Rota, or R-O-T-A, meaning wheel. This makes sense because the tarot corresponds to different heavenly bodies, constellations, and specific sections of sky that revolve like a wheel. I found the concept of auspicious vision being associated with a wheel surprisingly familiar because of this. In the Monier-Williams dictionary, the word chakra is derived from the root kram and arti, or kri, and refers, amongst many meanings, to the wheel of a carriage, the wheel of the sun's chariot, or metaphorically, the wheel of time.
Transitional from point A to point B. It represents time.
I found this very interesting because if we look at two major parts of the Nazi psychology of their war machine, we have the use of giant superweapons and the Blitzkrieg.
Oh,
Yeah, Blitzkrieg meaning, what is it, like lightning?
Lightning
like
War.
Lightning speed?
yeah.
Lightning War. There we go.
Get there faster than anyone else and start the war before anyone knows it's starting.
Which is very much like a chariot back in ancient times.
That's what the wheel do.
Leads into battle.
So I think it's safe to assume that the swastika, amongst other things, was symbolic to Hitler of this Chakravartin, this world leader who spun a wheel as his symbol
Weapon.
of power. Yeah, his weapon. According to the Russian archaeologist Gennady Zhdanovich, who studied some of the oldest examples of the symbol in Sintasha culture, the swastika symbolizes the universe, representing the spinning constellations of the celestial pole centered in Ursa Minoris, specifically the Little and Big Dipper, or chariots as they were known. Likewise, according to René Gugnon, the swastika is drawn by visualizing the Big Dipper, or Great Bear, in 4 phases of revolution around the pole star.
And also, interestingly enough, these types of crosses with the transitory ends to make it look like a wheel that's spinning is also a representation of the dynamic energy of the 4 seasons and the change that we experience every year on Earth. Every time the Earth revolves around the sun, it's tied with time, like at the hip.
So it would make sense that the center would be the North Pole.
Exactly. Or the center would be the sun radiating out into the 4 seasons and how the 4 seasons change. So there's all sorts of symbolism that ties into one another. But ultimately, it does represent a transition between periods. And it's interesting that there's 4 phases.
Right. And, you know, we all call it the Big Dipper, and at the very tip of it, that's not like the bowl side, at the handle side, that's Polaris.
Yep.
That's the North Star. And if you know what constellation is also up there is Draco.
Yep. Draconis.
It's a big circular dragon snake up there that the
And it
stars are in.
coils around Polaris, doesn't it?
Yes. Polaris isn't exactly in the constellation or star system of Draco, but it is in the center of the circle that Draco makes in the sky.
Yeah.
Now, this got me thinking. We have this overlap of the wheel, the chariot, and so I just Googled invention of the wheel, invention of the chariot, and what I found was that the invention of the wheel used in transportation most likely took place in the Eurasian steppes of modern-day Russia and Ukraine. So evidence of wheeled vehicles appears from mid-4th millennium BC, near simultaneously in the northern Caucasus and Central Europe. These earliest depictions of vehicles were probably ox carts. Interestingly, this region, specifically the Caucasus Mountains, were formerly believed to be the origin of the human species by prevalent European scholars of the 18th century. Probably because they're white. But this view is based upon the Caucasus being the location for the purported landing point of Noah's Ark, from whom the Bible states that humanity is descended, and the location of the suffering of Prometheus, who in Hesiod's myth had crafted humanity from clay. Of course, this recounts the Sumerian mythology we talked about, with Enki creating humans out of clay and saving us from Enlil for when he decided to create the flood.
Better wish you had a chariot when that fucking 10-mile wave is coming.
Likewise, if we consider there were ox carts and chariots, if this is where ox carts and chariots came from, it makes sense that light-skinned, ox cart, chariot-having peoples would have been encountered by various groups as they spread west into Europe, east into India, and south down into northern India. A study from the National Library of Medicine called Genetic Evidence on the Origins of Indian caste populations details how this migration of Indo-Aryans affected the Indian caste system. So, where did the Brahmins come from? I'm going to read straight from the study. The elevated position of the Brahmins goes back to the late Vedic period, when the Indo-European speakers settled in northern India, as they were already divided into Brahmins, or priests, warriors of the Kshatriya class, traders of the Vaishya class, and laborers of the Shudra class. Since then, there have been no fundamental change in their relative position, and the Brahmins still enjoy great prestige and many advantages, though their claim to tangible privileges is no longer officially admitted. The idea that the Brahmins invaded from North Eurasia is backed up by genetic testing on Brahmin caste today. And it says, for maternally inherited mtDNA, each caste is most similar to Asians. However, 20 to 30% of Indian mtDNA haplotypes belong to West Eurasian haplogroups, and the frequency of these haplotypes is proportional to caste rank. the highest frequency of West Eurasian haplotypes being found in the upper castes. In contrast, for paternally inherited Y chromosome variation, each caste is more similar to Europeans than to Asians. Moreover, the affinity to Europeans is proportionate to caste rank, the upper caste being the most similar to Europeans, particularly East Europeans. Analysis of these data demonstrates that the upper castes have a higher affinity to Europeans than Asians, and the upper caste is significantly more similar to Europeans than the lower castes. Collectively, all 5 data sets show a trend towards upper castes being more similar to Europeans, whereas lower castes are more similar to Asians. We conclude that Indian castes are more likely to be of Proto-Asian origin, with West Eurasian admixture resulting in rank-related, sex-specific differences in the genetic affinities of castes to Asians and Europeans. Woo!
Dang. So the highest caste system in India is actually closer in genetic relation to Europeans, European explorers.
This explains why in the Vedas they refer to themselves as Aryan.
Yeah, because they must have been a foreigner when they settled in India. And so they needed a name for themselves. And therefore is born the caste system to keep the blood pure or whatever.
Well, there's a lot of speculation about this. So, while today we can look to the caste system to find striations of ethnicity that tend towards lighter-skinned Indo-European stock, the higher up in the caste you go, the Aryans were not defined by their race, but rather language, culture, and social status. The only exception to this would specifically be the branch that settled in Iran, which came to be known as the Iranians. Otherwise, otherwise Aryan simply means noble and applies to a variety of races that share a unified linguistic origin.
Like the ancients. This is like a remnant of the ancient civilization that lived there and that traveled throughout Asia and expanded.
That is what they're, if you believe Noah's Ark and stuff, like this region is where, the people weren't dead anymore. He landed on a mountain, and then from there, everything else comes from it somehow. That's
okay.
Like
so after the flood, got it. Okay.
Yeah, like during the flood and after, we're talking about the race before and their bloodline. It would come, I guess, in the West. We've accepted that it's Noah who is the genetic.
I see. So it's the only remnant from the ancient world that we have as a genetic bloodline.
That's what they claim according to the myth and religion.
I guess because the wheel is the most goddamn awe-inspiring weapon mankind has ever seen, it sort of allowed people to spread their genetics far and wide. So the distinction of Aryan doesn't really pertain to race, really, but it does.
Yeah, it's more of a culture, right?
Yeah. So this is where the Nazis went full ham and just lost the narrative completely. But we'll get there. So in Sanskrit, the word Arya with a short initial A is applied to cultivators of the soil. It would seem to be connected to the etymology with the Latin arare and the archaic English ear, to plow. So while they may have been onto something with the Aryan wheel, the Nazis still avoided using the word Aryan more than you'd think because the term, even for Nazi scholars, was too inclusive and did not specifically imply Germany or Germans as being more Aryan than anyone else. For instance, the Nazi party was hostile towards Slavs, despite Slavs being equally as Aryan as Germans. And even to this day, we speak an Aryan language, English, so you could argue that, pretty much everyone who fought in World War II were Aryans. So it didn't really make sense.
I was going to say, the kind of interesting genetic stuff that you were just talking about with the Brahmin class, that kind of same stuff shows up even in Egypt and in Ireland. There's connections to Aryan.
Yeah, because some people speculate the pharaohs, show lighter skin that may have come from higher up north. And even we know that
happens in Greece too, like ancient Greece, like before the culture was founded on the islands. The first hieroglyphs they found, all of the nobility that didn't do field work or do entertainment, they were all white skinned in the paintings, and then the people that tilled the fields were painted dark. Especially females were white, and then also males were dark. So there was also this sex thing going on.
I mean, there were exceptions in Egypt, obviously, in Upper Egypt, which is the more southern. They had black pharaohs from Nubia. But there was a lot of paler skinned pharaohs, and genetic testing has linked it to Anatolia and other areas that Luke was just talking about. And the same thing with Ireland. They found nobility in Ireland. They had an Anatolian connection to them. And it's interesting because all of these classes of people seem to have the same thing. From Egypt to Ireland, they all kind of had this incestuous interbreeding, trying to keep that in the upper classes.
But it didn't so much have to do with race as just their own nobility, per se.
They were kept out of the sun a lot too because
Yeah.
they weren't workers. So there's
Exactly.
also that. There's not only genetics but also environmental factors to that.
Well, even the genetics thing, it doesn't even make that much sense because the amount of illegitimate children
Yeah.
that royalty has had throughout history, it makes it null and void pretty much.
So the problem was that prominent Western scholars like Arthur de Gobineau of France and Houston Stewart Chamberlain of Great Britain had primed the world to think of the Aryans as a racial group of white conquerors who were responsible for carrying the burden of civilization to the darker races of the world.
Some bullshit.
Some
straight up bullshit.
Yeah, no, it's bullshit. So it
Yeah,
was
because we're talking about modern people, and it's like you have maybe your blood is related to them, but you weren't those people from way back when who
No.
invented the wheel. Like we're all the fucking same at this point. You're no better than nobody.
they were so successful that we're all them. They put their dick in everything. And that us now. You can like I said, everyone in World War II was pretty much Aryan almost. You know what I mean? Like, and even
I mean,
like
the way I put it,
Go ahead.
if you're born on this planet, you're the same as me. There's nothing you can really do about it. And I guess later in the episode we'll go into a discussion about off-world life forms interacting with us. But for now, let's just keep it that we're all born on this planet.
well, we're getting to that, but we have to do this first because it all ties together. So
Yeah.
it was these racist theories from the authors we just spoke about that allowed the Nazis to do what they did. And in one case, the Nazis would come to define the Hindu caste system as one of purely racial preservation and apartheid. French-born Greek fascist and international spy Maximiani Julia Portes was an outspoken Nazi sympathizer and progenitor of Nazi mysticism, whose writings attempted to unify Hindu ideology, Nazi Aryanism, and the Indian independence movement into a unified force against the Allies and global Jewish population. The next section is taken directly from Wikipedia's esoteric Nazism page, and it's section defining Maximiani after she changed her name to Savitri Devi, which is how most people still know her. For her, the swastika was an especially important symbol, as she felt it symbolized Aryan unity of Hindus and Germans. Savitri Devi, above all, was interested in the Indian caste system, which she regarded as the archetype of racial laws intended to govern the segregation of different races and to maintain the pure blood of the fair-complexioned Aryans. She regarded the survival of the minority of Brahmins among an enormous population of many different Indian races after 60 centuries as living tribute to the value of the Aryan caste system. Savitri Devi integrated Nazism into a broader cyclical framework of Hindu history. She considered Hitler, get this, to be the ninth avatar of Vishnu, and called him the godlike individual of our times, the man against time, the greatest European of all times. Having an ideal vision of returning his Aryan people to an earlier, more perfect time, and also having the practical wherewithal to fight the destructive forces in time, she saw his defeat and the forestalling of his vision coming to fruition as a result of him being too magnanimous, too trusting, and too good, of not being merciless enough, and having as his psychological makeup too much sun or beneficence, and not enough lightning, practical ruthlessness. Unlike his coming incarnation, Kalki, who will act with banana. Yeah,
I'm sorry, this woman is just so fucking delusional.
she's so bananas, but that's why we have to talk about it.
Man.
Contrary to Adolf Hitler, Kalki will not spare a single one of the enemies of the divine cause. Not a single one of its outspoken opponents, but also not a single one of the lukewarm, the opportunists, the ideologically heretical, or of the racially bastardized, of the unhealthy, of the hesitating, of the all too human. Not a single one of those who embody or in character of mind bear the stamp of the fallen ages. Blah, blah, blah.
So, like, just shove people out of wheelchairs down a flight of stairs?
That's what she's saying, basically.
Damn.
This lady would fit right in on the World Economic Forum, I think.
Oh, yeah. Perfect
Young
candidate.
global leaders? Sure.
Well, I had a Satanist friend who basically said that what the Nazis were guilty of doing was the stuff they do in private, just doing it way loudly in public, which I still think about sometimes. Well, today we know Aryan refers to a language group from which all Proto-Indo-European language branched off from. Nazi mystics like Savitri Devi were convinced it was a racial group and had mystic origins and were known to the ancient Greeks as the mythical Hyperboreans.
Pray tell, what is a Hyperborean?
Well, see, this is the thing. The myth of these people had been around for a long time. This is another one of those myths that the Nazis were like, oh, that's ours. I don't know if you're going to say something, Malcor.
No. I was just going to say, like, a lost race now, because there's, like, very little knowledge of what their society was really about and located. Right?
No written records or anything, except for like rock scrawlings.
Well, we have these philosophers, writers, historians. So in Greek mythology, the Hyperboreans were a mythical people who lived in the far northern part of the known world. Their name appears derived from the Greek beyond, Boreas, the personified northern wind, although some scholars prefer a derivation from to carry over. So Hyperboreans could literally mean to carry over because they had carts. Oh man. Herodotus wrote in the 7th century BC that poet Aristeas wrote of the Hyperboreans in a poem that is now lost called the Arimaspia about a journey to Isidonis, who are estimated to have lived in the Kazakh steppes. Beyond these live the one-eyed Arimaspians. Yeah, further on, there are gold-guarding griffins, and beyond these are the Hyperboreans. Herodotus assumed that Hyperborea lay somewhere in Northeast Asia. Despite their location in an otherwise frigid part of the world, the Hyperboreans were believed to inhabit a sunny, temperate, and divinely blessed land. Pindar, contemporary of Herodotus, described the otherworldly perfection of the Hyperboreans.
Never the muse is absent from their ways. Lyres crash and flutes cry, and everywhere maiden choruses whirling. Neither disease nor bitter old age is mixed in their sacred blood. Far from labor in battle they live. This strikes me as you see a lot of this mythology in media, modern media, is this lost civilization that lives above the clouds.
Yep. Like, this is part of our collective mythology we've had since time immemorial.
And it seems to always be high elevation, above clouds, and you think it would be really cold up there, but it's a paradise. And it seems to be heaven, as we would conceptualize it as children, like going up into the sky or whatever. But for some reason, it's almost like Eden is up there somewhere. And that's where maybe the Tower of Babylon was trying to reach.
Yeah, and in a sense, they kind of equate north with the sky and south with the underworld, and the conception of there being an underworld, the conception of there being a heaven, that these places exist and somewhere you can actually go. Like,
it's like when you're referring to hell, you always like tend to point to the ground, down, south.
And it's also interesting that it's associated with Apollo, because the higher up you go, I guess they would assume that you're closer to the sun.
Well, this actually kind of blew my mind. So in many versions of this story, they live in the Rhipaean Mountains, which shielded them from the effects of the north wind. The oldest myths portray them as the favorites of Apollo, and some ancient Greek writers regard the Hyperboreans as the mythical founders of Apollo's shrines at Delos and Delphi. So what do you mean? Who's Delphi, right? Okay, so...
The plot thickens.
Yes.
Oh.
The gas is kicking in now. The volcanic gas is kicking in.
Yeah, and the high altitude. I'm losing oxygen here, buddy.
So if you've ever seen like that movie 300, these are the priestesses that would inhale the gas from the rock and have visions of the future. Now the high priestess was known as the Pythia, and she presided over the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. She specifically served as its oracle and was known as the Oracle of Delphi. Kind of a big deal. Her title was also historically glossed over in English as Pythoness.
Ooh, female python. Snake.
But why? The name Pythia is derived from Pytho, which in myth was the original name of Delphi. Etymologically, the Greeks derived this place name from the verb puthian, to rot, which refers to the sickly sweet smell from the decomposing body of the monstrous Python after she was slain by Apollo. Sound a little bit like Apep?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Sun god, slain snakes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in Greek mythology...
Pythons can swim too.
Interesting. Well, see, that makes sense then. In Greek mythology, Python was the serpent, sometimes represented as a medieval-style dragon, living at the center of the earth, believed by the ancient Greeks to be at Delphi. Python, sometimes written Pytho, presided at the Delphic Oracle, which existed in the cult center for its mother, Gaia, Earth. Pytho being the place name that was substituted for the earlier Crisa. Greeks considered the site to be the center of the earth, represented by a stone, the omphalos, or navel, which the python guarded. So right there, we have the serpent in the egg mythology again, which the Greeks just probably took from the Egyptians.
And the egg connected to the mother via the umbilical cord, whereas the umbilical cord representing another snake that is a transitory from the mother to the child.
And the birth of duality,
And I mean, the umbilical cord also, I mentioned previously that sometimes it's thought that Apep was born from the umbilical cord of Ra. He is the umbilical cord of Ra.
Oh,
Yes,
that's why it's a
this is true.
serpent.
Hmm.
And we've just talked about human psychology in general, how like the father principle has to reject the mother principle in order to have a separate personality or distinct ego form. So this is like built into human psychology as well. So Python became the chthonic enemy of the later Olympian deity Apollo, who slew it and took over Python's former home and oracle. These were the most famous and revered in the ancient Greek and Roman worlds. Like many monsters, Python was known as Gaia's son and prophesied as Gaia's son. Therefore, Apollo had to eliminate this opponent before establishing his temple at Delphi. Thus, we see even the myth of the oracles of Delphi and their hallowed position in Greek culture, having been consulted by kings and heads of state as a matter of necessity, was founded upon the idea of solar gods from the north displacing Gaia's native serpent children in the south, and establishing itself as the new oracular priesthood of the Indo-European world by controlling time-space penetrating gas that rose from the center of the earth. In short, the Greeks have always sort of believed their ancestors were ancient aliens that came in the form of frost giants from the center of the world. Nazi mystics and fascist sympathizers have continued to expand this ancient aliens theory well into the present to justify their evil ideology. And if you'd like to hear more about this stuff, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your donation of just $5 gets you access to all our extended episodes, access to our Discord server where you could actually talk to people about this stuff, and I'll even send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our cover art. That's probably actually worth $5. So thank you, everybody. If you see anybody with that you think might secretly be a Third Reich spy, make sure to eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Lasers.